Chapter 4. When the world stops. When the world stops. The economic consequences of a pandemic. Pandemics are not just public health crises, they are profound economic shocks with cascading effects on every facet of society. The sudden and widespread disruption caused by a global health emergency reverberates through supply chains, labor markets, and financial systems, often plunging nations into recession. Understanding these economic consequences is essential for building resilience against future pandemics. 1. Supply chain breakdowns. A fragile web. The modern global economy relies on intricate and interdependent supply chains, where goods are produced, assembled, and distributed across multiple countries. This efficiency, while economically advantageous, creates vulnerabilities that pandemics exploit. 1. Disrupted manufacturing and trade mechanism. Factory shutdowns, transportation restrictions, and workforce disruptions lead to production halts and delays in the delivery of goods. Examples: during the COVID-19 pandemic, China's temporary lockdown of key manufacturing hubs disrupted global supply chains, leading to shortages of everything from electronics to pharmaceuticals. The 2020 shipping crisis, exacerbated by pandemic-related port closures, stranded containers of goods, delaying shipments worldwide. 2. Critical shortages. Essential items, including personal protective equipment, PPE, ventilators, and vaccines, can become scarce as demand surges and supply falters. Examples: the early stages of COVID-19 saw global shortages of masks and gloves, leaving healthcare workers unprotected. The automotive industry faced delays in 2021 due to a global semiconductor shortage, partially driven by pandemic-induced disruptions. 3. Price inflation. Scarcity drives up prices, creating inflationary pressures that affect consumers and businesses alike. Examples: food prices surged in many countries during COVID-19 as supply chain disruptions and labor shortages in agriculture reduced availability. Key lesson: pandemics reveal the fragility of just-in-time supply chain models. Diversifying production and creating strategic reserves of critical goods are essential to mitigating future disruptions. 2. Job losses and labor market strain. Pandemics often trigger widespread unemployment, disproportionately affecting vulnerable populations and exacerbating existing inequalities. 1. Mass layoffs and furloughs mechanism. Businesses in sectors reliant on human interaction, such as hospitality, retail, and tourism, face reduced demand and are forced to cut jobs. Examples: during the COVID-19 pandemic, the International Labour Organization, ILO, estimated that 114 million jobs were lost globally in 2020. Airlines, hotels, and restaurants saw unprecedented layoffs as travel bans and lockdowns curtailed demand. 2. Informal and gig economy workers. Workers in the informal sector often lack social protections, making them particularly vulnerable to income loss during pandemics. Examples: street vendors, ride-share drivers, and domestic workers faced sudden income loss during COVID-19 lockdowns, with limited access to unemployment benefits. 3. Long-term impacts on employment. Many businesses close permanently during pandemics, leading to prolonged unemployment and reduced job creation. Examples: a wave of small business closures in the US during COVID-19 permanently displaced workers, with many pivoting to lower-paying or precarious jobs. 4. Sectoral disparities. While some sectors, such as e-commerce and technology, experience growth during pandemics, others, like travel, hospitality, and live entertainment, face steep declines. Key lesson: governments must implement targeted support measures, such as wage subsidies, unemployment benefits, and retraining programs, to cushion the economic blow and facilitate recovery. 3. Economic recession. The domino effect. Pandemics often trigger recessions, as declining consumer spending, disrupted business operations, and financial uncertainty converge to stall economic growth. 1. Decline in consumer spending mechanism. Fear of infection, job losses, and lockdowns suppress consumer spending, particularly on non-essential goods and services. Examples: global retail sales plummeted during the initial months of COVID-19, with significant declines in sectors like apparel, luxury goods, and dining. The travel and tourism industry lost $4.5 trillion in 2020, as international arrivals dropped by 74%. 2. Business failures and reduced investment. Small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, which often operate on thin margins, are particularly vulnerable to prolonged closures and reduced demand. Examples: in the US, nearly 200,000 more businesses closed permanently in 2020 than in a typical year. 3. Government spending and debt. Governments face increased expenditures on healthcare, unemployment benefits, and stimulus measures, often leading to higher deficits and debt levels. Examples: the US federal government spent over $5 trillion on COVID-19 relief packages, including direct payments, enhanced unemployment benefits, and small business loans. Many low-income countries faced debt crises as they struggled to fund pandemic responses while servicing existing obligations. 4. Global economic contraction. Pandemics are rarely confined to one country or region. Their global nature means that downturns in one area ripple outward, affecting trade, investment, and financial markets. Examples: the International Monetary Fund, IMF, reported that the global economy contracted by 3.5% in 2020, the worst peacetime decline since the Great Depression. 4. The hidden costs. Inequality and long-term consequences. The economic fallout of pandemics is not evenly distributed, deepening inequalities within and between nations. 1. Impact on low-income nations. Developing countries often lack the fiscal space to implement large-scale stimulus measures, leaving them more vulnerable to prolonged recessions. Examples: many sub-Saharan African nations faced increased poverty rates as exports declined and remittances fell during COVID-19. 2. Widening wealth gaps. While the wealthy can often insulate themselves from economic shocks, low-income workers and marginalized communities bear the brunt of job losses and income reductions. Examples: billionaire wealth increased by $5 trillion during the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic, while millions fell into poverty. 3. Generational impacts. Prolonged recessions can have long-lasting effects on younger generations, including reduced educational attainment, limited job opportunities, and lower lifetime earnings. Examples: school closures during COVID-19 disrupted learning for over 1.6 billion children, with long-term implications for human capital development. 5. Resilience and recovery. Mitigating economic consequences. While the economic consequences of pandemics are severe, proactive measures can mitigate their impact and speed recovery. 1. Building resilient supply chains. Diversifying suppliers, maintaining strategic reserves, and leveraging technology can reduce vulnerabilities in global supply chains. 2. Investing in social safety nets. Robust unemployment benefits, universal healthcare, and targeted financial aid can protect vulnerable populations during crises. 3. Supporting businesses. Governments can provide low-interest loans, tax relief, and grants to prevent business closures and stimulate job creation. 4. Global cooperation. Coordinated international efforts, including debt relief for low-income nations and equitable vaccine distribution, are essential for global economic recovery.